Hey, I'm Sandra, and this is just a coffee picking minute. I'm here in Costa Rica in my coffee field. There's a little bit of coffee still left to be picked here. Kind of running at the end of the harvest. There's a little bit of sun, but there's mostly wind right now, so I'm taking a moment because I have work to do. so, but there's always work to do, right? But this is kind of nice to do this kind of work and show you what I have to do. I gotta clean these leaves out that came in just overnight. So nothing pressing. So I cleaned them last night and I'll have to clean them again, right? So anyway, it's nice to be able to do a work that you enjoy, So picking coffee, my hands are a mess, but that's okay. Got coffee over there drying. And I can tell you, I did not grow up saying, oh, I'm going to be a coffee picker one day, right? It never even came across my mind. Matter of fact, I remember when I was young, I relived one thing that you were able to do for summer work was to pick tomatoes, work in tomato fields, actually run like harvesters, or we picked peaches. So someone wants to get in the camera. And I said, I will study hard. I will never do that kind of work. So I could say I absolutely detest it. Any type of farm work, detest it. And I could not wait to get out of farmland in order to get away from it. So it's, it's a shock to me that I am where I am, but that's okay. It's a long story as far as how we ended up being here, but here I am, and so I'm grateful to be in Costa Rica in the middle of a coffee field with food to eat and place to put my feet and be able to rest and know that I don't have anyone calling me to demand that I do this thing or that thing or the other thing. And, I'm grateful. I could just say I'm grateful. But, just going back to when I did work, I studied, and my first job actually that I really enjoyed, and I got the opportunity as a high school student to work in public information on a military base. And that was actually just as the Vietnam War was ending. That's how old I am. And so I actually got to meet prisoners of war, people who had really gone through the worst of the worst. And then to be able to see their dignity after going through something really traumatic and really difficult. And they were, after they had been restored back to health after, being where they were during that time and coming back to their family and their squadron and their base. And, I even went to school with some of the children of these different ones, and they came back with such a dignity. And it's a really good lesson for me that you can go through some of the worst and most difficult things, but it doesn't have to change you as far as who you are. Matter of fact, it might even refine you and help you really see who you are. And I can relate that, thinking back to when I worked in public information, but in school districts. And you go through a lot. For people who are public information officers for school districts, they handle a lot. Is a very, very, very difficult position because they're having to maintain calm during a crisis, during a difficulty, and keep everybody else calm. Keep the media calm, keep the parents calm, keep the administrators calm, and manage the crisis. And when we would get together and get to hear some of how they dealt with different situations, like one of the major school shootings, Columbine at that time, and some of the other things, you just had nothing but admiration for those people. And so for myself, when I was working in school district public information, I had to deal with a lot of crisis situations too. And some of them were really, really traumatic. And, I could think of one offhand that was specifically traumatic, that just in thinking about it, as I was preparing to record this video, even though it's been over 20 years ago, it actually made me cry, which told me that I had not released that trauma even after 20 years. It had stayed in my nervous system. And so you think about the impact on how those things, you're not allowed to let it change you. So you deal with a very traumatic situation where, young children of the school had been murdered. The murderer was still on the loose. You're dealing with people with various languages, having to manage the media and the administrators and international news, and then go right back to your job and handle something like the Teacher of the Year celebration, like you didn't even have a second to stop and reflect or think about or decompress. You just had to go right back to what you were doing. And, I could say now, as I think about it, I always had some other goals and other personal things that I wanted to do. And so I could say that I probably quiet quit before they invented the word quiet quit or those words, And I always had some other things that I wanted to do that were personal, So I was really working towards my own personal goals and objectives, even though I really enjoyed the work that I did. But it was very difficult. Never the school people. The teachers were lovely. The principals, they just were so dedicated to the work that they did. But it was very difficult being in an arena of dealing with school administrators. Then you have also the political community, the board members, they need to represent themselves. And my job as a public information officer was to be neutral. Legally, you had to be neutral. You couldn't say one way or the other way. You truly represented the public. So my interest was always in making sure that the public was well informed, that the school district was properly represented. I never lied. I always made sure I told the truth. That was absolutely the number one thing for me. And a lot of times you would get in trouble with not that the administrators want you to lie, but, people think of the word spin, and I would never spin a story. I would make sure that the district's interests were properly represented, but then also the public. I mean, it's their children, is their tax money. They needed to know, the truth. And so you can know the truth without anybody being harmed by knowing the truth. Matter of fact, if you don't tell the full truth, then people are harmed on the other hand, right? But it did make it difficult. And for me as a public relations professional, I actually was accredited in public relations. So for those who don't know what that means, is the highest standard that you can get. You have to have so many years experience. You have to take an oral exam. You have to take a written exam. And on the first go, only 50% of the people who take the exam actually pass. So when we were studying, there were 6 of us who started studying. 2 of us reached the point of taking the exam, and only 1 passed first go. For me, it was really a pleasure to do it, but it came a point where it didn't become a pleasure. It just wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't enjoyable. And I probably would have stayed there if it was, if I didn't have to deal with so much opposition. I don't even understand it because I know I did a good job. I know from the feedback from the community, I know from, the public information that I did when they had to do bond measures, that the bond measures that I provided public information for, they actually passed, where they had never passed before in a particular case. So because of really working hard on providing very, very good public information, and not because I'm saying I did it, but because I was able to work with the local media people who were fantastic. You think we would have an antagonistic relationship, but we didn't. We just loved each other because they liked the fact that I knew they had to get a job done, right? So I gave them good information, and so we would brainstorm on how we could be sure to get good information for their readers who were our public. We had the same public, right? And so, when you reach a point when you could see, okay, and I feel like many of you who do a really good job, a lot of times you get pushed out of your job. Pushed out. And I am not going to lie. That's what happened to me in a lot of cases, right? And so, but the thing was, I was already going somewhere else. They just didn't know. Like one job, they were like, cut my salary in half, and they didn't know that the next day I actually was being approved somewhere else. So anyway, I didn't care that was happening to me. And so finally on the last one, it was great because I was able to then, my husband, who was alive at the time, he was like, you know what, just let's go. We were ready to go. Like, let's just go. And so it was a perfect opening to be able to explore things that I wanted to do. We heard about an opportunity to come to Costa Rica, booked the ticket, and canceled a vacation we were going to take and, for upcoming weekend. And so we were able to come down here and check it out. We're like, we'll move it. So it was great. And that was in January of 2004. By August, because we had a couple other things scheduled during that year. So by August 2004, our house was sold. Our stuff was given away. Didn't even have garage sales. Sold a few things, right? But we were out. We were here. And so August 2004. And I'm grateful that I'm still here. So for those of you who are in a position, you're like, I'm quiet quitting. Quiet quit with a purpose. Start planning. Start doing what you want to do, But don't just, we kind of move kind of quick, So we had plan A through Z and triple Z, and none of those plans worked out. I could say clearly not one thing we planned worked out. Not one thing. But, thankfully, to the power of prayer, we were able to move down. Thankfully, I've been able to stay. And even this little coffee, I don't live off the coffee. It's not a business that I live on. But even sometimes when I really had no money, I was able to sell a few packs of coffee to friends, and make a little, just something to buy gas at that time, pay for dog food. And, still be able to smile and laugh and to say, it's so worth it. So for those of you maybe who are in a position right now in a job where you're like, I can't take the stress. I can't take it. Start quiet quitting, I'm not telling people what to do, but you know what? Start making a plan. Stop spending money. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, stop spending money. Do a complete money management, money makeover, do a mindset for, people always say time is money. I'm going to say money is time. You hear that? Money is time. For every dollar you do not spend, that's more time you have to be doing what you want to do. Right? So, that credit card you have, cut that thing up or put it on ice or whatever. It's not an emergency. The shoes are not an emergency. All right. That girls trip with the girls, they could just go because you taking a trip where you're going to be gone. You're going to be gone. You want to be gone? See right there. You want to be gone wherever it is that you decide that you want to go, whatever it is that you want to do. What I hope to do with this channel, please subscribe, please join me. If you've gotten this far, hopefully I have something to say that catches your interest. But like I said, I've been here now for 21 years. Really, first visit was 22 years ago. It's not easy. It's not easy. I have a lot of people tell me whatever, different things. No, you just don't know what you're doing. I know I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm still here to prove that I don't know what I'm doing all the way to still being here. So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, the smartest person, don't have millions, never did. But, for those of you who want to who really just want to get out of the situation that you're in, you're the one who really has that control. Start looking, start examining, really just start making a door for yourself. You don't know how the door is going to open. But when that door of opportunity, when you are there in front of that door and opportunity, you're going to be there and ready to walk into it. So not working. You're going to be ready to walk in. So anyway, this is Sandra. I'm here in Costa Rica. It's a little bit windy, but this was just a coffee picking minute. Coffee picking. Just wait a minute. Just let me fill you in a little bit. That's what I'm saying. But thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to being able to share some of my experiences, and if you like what I said, please subscribe. Recommend me to your friends who are also saying, I got to get out of this job, I got to get out of here. I got to go. Alrighty then. Take care. Thank you. And we'll see you the next time. Ciao.